Welcome again. We're glad to have you guys here, and I just want to welcome everyone here for the first time. My name is Pastor Chris. My wife Brenda and I, we pastor here at Our City Church, and today we have a very special guest. I told you about him last week. If you've been around here for a while, you know a lot about him, and you've heard a lot about him and his impact in our family and in our life. And today we're going to get a chance to have a special conversation with Dr. Sam Huddleston. So without any further ado, because I want to use all the time we can to just hear from him, would you guys do me a favor and welcome, within Our City Church, welcome Dr. Sam Huddleston. Come on, y'all. Hey, hey, hey. Let me know if that's too tall or too short. You all right with it? All right. Well, we are really excited to hear from you. Now, there is a chance that throughout, at the end of this, we might ask for some questions from y'all. So if you want to consider that and think of one, that's fine. We might not, too. So you might just have your question. But basically, what my experience with us is, what we want to do today and what we've talked about is, Pastor Sam, he's the best storyteller that I know. And we basically get on the phone or text multiple times a week, and we just kind of do conversations in life, and we've been doing that for 20 years. And so we're going to bring you into that and talk about the things that we talk about all the time. And over the years, we've talked about plenty. And so basically what I thought we'd do is just sit here and chat a little bit. I wanted to talk, or at least start off by inviting you to tell everyone kind of, how did you become a Christ follower? How and when, and where did that take place for you?
I saw a movie years ago, Lethal Weapon, and the guy stepped in on some carpet, the next thing you know, they were rolling him up in it, taking him out. So I'm a little nervous looking at this carpet, Okay. Let me introduce you. This is my wife for 42 years, Linda.
Hey!
In heaven, there's a special place for her. In my family, we do weddings well. We just don't do marriage too good. And so 42 years that's a long time for someone in my family. But to answer his question, I was involved in the criminal justice system. I did crime, and they gave me justice. And it was while there that I realized this is really not a good career move. And I wanted to change, and I didn't know how. And one night, I sat on this yard, and I just told God I didn't believe he existed. But my dad said he did. And my dad had never lied to me. And I said, you know what, God, I just need some help. And that was the beginning of my journey of faith. And a few years later, they let me go home, and I met this beautiful lady. Now, you want to know what faith is? When you marry someone after a long vacation, and you've only known them 4 months. So I asked her one day, why did you marry me? She said, because I saw Jesus in you. And then she said, we got married. Then I started saying, Jesus, I know you're in there somewhere. Come out wherever you are. And so now we have 3 married kids and a whole slew of grandbabies.
Talk to me about your role with your grandchildren, just your role as a grandparent and the influence that you believe that you have in their life.
I like being a leader, and I love my children. And I used to tell my grandchildren, we will have memories, but they won't outdo the memories that I have with your parents. I loved being a dad. My wife will tell you, I like my kids. But I said that way too soon. And these grandbabies, they came along and they just kind of started pushing my kids out of my heart and, just, hey, how you doing there? Well, Dad, can we go? No, I'm going with your kids over here. And see, in my life, what I try to do with my grandchildren, and they all live in the neighborhood except 3 of them recently moved about an hour, a little bit over an hour away. So they grew up around us. And ever since they were little, I'd walk them to school on Fridays when I was home. I can't even begin to tell you the stories and the things that we got to talk about. And I just love being a grandpa, and I would tell my wife that we're making memories. And we'll do something, and I'll say, what are we doing? They said, we're making a memory. I say, okay. And I tell her, see, they don't know what I'm doing. So let me tell you what I'm doing. One day they're going to put me in the ground, and they're going to walk away, and they're going to say, remember we did this with Papa? Remember? Memories. He was preparing us for today. So I'm preparing them for when they could no longer hear my physical voice. But I'm going to haunt them with memories. And some memories are pretty costly.
I've heard you say there's a heavy amount of influence that grandparents have over and against even parents. And you had found a statistic about certain behavior that they may or may not take up based on the influence of a grandparent. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I was in a conference once, and this lady came up and said that grandparents actually have more influence over whether or not a child smokes than the parents. And so I'm sitting there listening to this information from this doctor, and I sat there thinking, if that's true in that arena, how much more it is true in the spiritual. And so I'm an early riser. And so what I'll do sometime, each one of them, we have 13 grandchildren, which means I'm always broke. But it's a good broke. And then I'm gonna get back. How many of you have grandkids? How many of you have seen that movie Over the Hedge? You know, and you know who Pammy is? That ADD squirrel? Pammy's here this morning. Okay? I'm going to be all over, but I'm going to get back. There's somebody involved in your life on a weekly basis that is just like that, but I'm not dropping a dime on anybody. I'm not going to tell them.
I just want you to know that they're used to me.
Yeah.
And so they won't even know you're being anything. They'll just like, oh, I guess that's what it's like to be a pastor. You just go on rabbit trails when you talk. I told somebody coming into it, I said, you need to know that if you think I have the ability to chase shiny objects in my mind while I'm preaching, you guys are going to meet the OG of it, okay? So I'm a hand-me-down of that right here. The original one is with us today, the Dr. Sam Huddleston. Do trust. But he will always bring it back home and land the plane. Do you ever feel like that on Sundays? Like, where's Pastor Chris going? He's somewhere else. And then just right before we almost get done, I come back home for you. I learned it sitting at the feet of this mighty man right now.
It's amazing what you get blamed for. And he talked so long, I forgot where I was going, so.
See? They're used to that too.
What was the question again?
We were talking about the statistic about smoking and the spirit value
So I have like, one of my granddaughters, she just graduated from Azusa Pacific University. So we have, I think, six. Now we have 5 or 6 grandkids that are in college. Out of the 13, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, out of the 13 of them, 8 of them have cell phones. So I'll get up sometime 2 or 3 in the morning, and they're on a group text. I text any grandparent that has grandchildren with a cell phone and you don't communicate with them, you don't need a phone. It's not to talk on. It's to stay in touch with them. Yesterday, my wife and I with Pastor Chris and Brenda, if you don't know, she can do the picture thing. She doesn't say, okay, 1, 2, 3. She's just snapping pictures. And so I kissed my wife and I sent it to these grandbabies. And immediately I'm getting all this feedback. One of them sends one back, ugh, kissing, you know. I said, well, we got 3 kids. We kissed at least 3 times, okay? So, at least 3 times. And I'll send them things. And then sometimes I will extrapolate a name over here and I'll send them a personal message and say, I just want you to know, Papa was really thinking about you. And I'll say something, and almost every time they'll say, how did you know? Well, they don't know I used to be a teenager. And they don't know that I know that they're very pretty. They don't know that I know what the guys are saying when they look at them. They don't know that I know that the guys are not saying, wow, I heard that her grandfather's a pastor. praise God, we're just not going to touch her. She's just too pretty, and no, 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 no. And so I'll say things. They think I'm being real spiritual, which is okay, you know, but I'm just realistic. I know what life is all about. And we have these incredible conversations. And my wife, she has really encouraged me to do that. She says they already have a lot of strong women in their lives. They need strong men. They need you. And my granddaughters, I'm telling you, and my grandsons, I'm living a good life. To have lived the life that I have lived, I'm living a good life, a very good life.
I heard you say just over the years so many great things about different people in your life. The voices, as we're in this series of voices for our church and for our lives, you've had some voices that were in your life that had some pretty significant things. Could you tell just a little bit about some of them? We can even start with your grandfather. I know that you've talked about the significance of him and his place in your life.
My grandfather was a police officer, and first African-American police officer, actually was deputy sheriff, a resident deputy in Merced. Came from Muskogee, Oklahoma during the Dust Bowl, and if you hear Uncle Charlie say it, they all came in a car with no engine, you know, and you got an Uncle Charlie in your family too. That's the biggest liar in the family. And when you ask him, well, how did you do that? He says, well, Daddy had this car full of kids, and people would come along, and they'd see this man broke down on the side of the road, and they'd push him 50 miles, and somebody else would push him 60 miles and 10 miles, and next thing you knew, we ended up in California. Okay, I got it, Uncle Charlie. And that's his story. But my grandfather got to California, built a good name for our family, became deputy sheriff, resident deputy, and then, but I can still remember at 65, my grandfather tapping me on top of the head saying, grandson, you're going to be a great man. And I would look up at him with his Stetson hat on, his police uniform, and his gun. I said, well, how do you know? He goes, I'm your grandfather. I know those things. And when life started getting crazy on me and all the rest, I could always hear my grandfather's voice. And so one day when I was in this crazed life as a teenager, he came over one day and he said, now, grandson, I heard you're getting in trouble. And I said, you know, Daddy Bryce, and in my family, my grandfather, he went like this. In my family, that meant, shut up, I'm talking. Okay? If you didn't shut up, the hand did come down, but you just didn't like it. And I'd seen that as a kid. So when my grandfather did this, instinctively, I took about 2 steps back, just in case. And he said, I'm going to tell you something, boy. He says, change your name or change your character. It is not your name, it's mine. And he turned, walked away, got in his Lincoln, and drove off with my grandmother. My mother came home that night. By this time, I was living with my mother, his ex-daughter-in-law, and I said, I need to have my name changed. She said, why? I said, never mind the why. I just need my name changed. And I never got it changed. And then years later, when he passed away, they brought me home from this vacation that was being paid for by the taxpayers. And it was the first time in my life I ever looked down at my grandfather. And I made a promise to him. I said, Daddy Bryce, I'm sorry I messed up your name. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to get your name back again. A lot of years went by. College, graduate school, earned doctorate degree, years of marriage, meeting the president, all kind of stuff happened. And when he died, I couldn't go to the funeral, to the graveyard. I had to go back to this temporary home. And so all these years have gone by. And this past December, the governor of our state gave me an unconditional, complete pardon. And I tell my wife, I said, I need to go visit my grandfather's grave. So she drove me. We went down there. And as I was she was sitting in the car. It was kind of a cool day, late December. I walked across, and I stood over his grave, him and my grandmother, and I said these words. Daddy Bryce, the governor of just this state just gave you your name, your good name back. Are we good? And I just stood there. Are we good? And of course he's not there, and I knew that. I'm pretty spiritual, but I ain't that spiritual. And my wife was taking some pictures I didn't know. And when I got in the car, I said, I felt like what I got back was my grandfather saying, son, we always been good. And but you needed to keep your promise to me. Look where you're at in life because you kept your promise. That's probably one of the loudest voices. My dad was another voice. He never gave up on me. I got in trouble. He came to visit me and said, son, we're in trouble. I don't know what we're going to do, but we're going to make it. And I remember thinking, that was when I believed in God. You understand? See, as long as I was hitting home runs, making touchdowns, making his name proud in the community, and people would, Eddie, you should have seen Sammy this, you, Sammy. But when I got bad, and he still loved me just as much, I said to myself, because he raised us in church, and just because you raise a kid in church doesn't make him a Christian. If it did, if you raise him on a farm, it might make him a pig or a cow. You know? And he was consistent for all those years. He'd visit me. In fact, my dad visited me so much they gave him extra visits. They knew him by name. He was a voice. There was an old white preacher that used to come to this institution and taught me about Jesus, trained me up in the way of the faith, and became my spiritual dad. He passed away this past December. Just a few of them. There was my Sunday school teacher, Mrs. Harding. I hear these people. Do you understand? You don't know the impact of your voice. You don't until the voice is gone and you can still hear it. And that only happens if you'll spend time with that person. It doesn't happen by hitting and missing. It's intentional spending time with someone. That's why when I'm home on Fridays, I walk my grandbabies to school. And I told my office, I said, make sure that my Fridays are always empty. She said, why? I said, I'm running out of Fridays. Because my youngest is 8 years old. She's 8. And I'm just trying to do this thing called life. I don't have it figured out. I am not an answer man. I'm struggling to this thing, and I think I'm going to be more shocked than anybody to hear Jesus say, welcome home. I'm going to go, you mean I really made it? And this young voice, this is a voice. You know, I had a guy 2 years ago gave me some white tennis shoes. What in the world I look like wearing white tennis shoes? So I gave them to my grandson. That shirt that Jesse had on up here, somebody gave me a shirt like that. I was 65. I don't wear stuff like that. I gave it to my son. So I come up here, and for 2 days, he's talking about, man, you know what? He says, I can wear suits now. I said, you? Yeah, but you got to know how to put it together. You got to have white tennis shoes. What in the world are you? So what did I go out and buy yesterday? White tennis shoes. I'm gonna send him the bill. And I'm telling you, and for the first time in my life, I ain't even got on those socks. I'm going. I always tell him, I said, you know what, boy, you one little crazy white boy, man. You know. In fact, I would tell him when we first met, I said, honey, I'm gonna go hang out with Chris. She go, Chris. I said, Chris. She goes, oh, the little skinny white boy. Yeah, honey, the little skinny white boy. I'm gonna go hang out with the little skinny white boy. And but he's a voice. He is one of the smartest young men that I know. He sent me a text last night of an article. It's 10 o'clock at night. I normally go to bed about 8:30. He also knows I get up early. So when I get a phone call or a text at like 4 in the morning, he knows I'm up. I want to say, Chris, I want to talk to Jesus right now. I don't want to talk to you, man, you know. And I read this article because he sent it to me. I get a lot of articles. But the impact this man has had on my life. When I pray for him, I thank God for his mother, and I bless the memory of his father. I won't let his father die because of the impact this young man, not just on me, but we'll talk about my grandkids and the impact he's had on them in a moment, but it's the voices.
It's meaningful to have our relationship in front of everybody, for you guys to get to peer into it. We're hoping that through the conversations we're having and the discussion, that you're inspired, no matter what stage of life you're in, to take a little of what we've tried to do for the last 20 years in each other's lives and to do it with someone else for you. We love our families, and we've become family to each other, but I think that it's important that the world sees that people who don't always look like you, think like you, aren't even the same age as you. You learn how to find a relationship where you can pour into it and you can receive from it as well. And we're hoping that you pick that up today. You said something about how you guys used to ask your dad about your parents' relationship and how it deteriorated, and you would always ask, what happened between y'all? Can you talk a little bit about that discussion?
So as I got older and I got married, I want to know what happened. Daddy and mama had 6 kids. They get a divorce, and dad is stuck with 6 kids. At one point in my life, there were 6 kids. My mother's mother, my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, my grandfather, step-grandfather, my Uncle Daniel, my great-uncle, my great-grandmother, and my father. We all lived in one house. And I don't remember being crowded. I do remember eating very well. I remember 2 things. My grandmother was an incredible cook, and she made her own wine. And the first time I ever got drunk, I used to watch her put this stuff underneath the sink, and it would just sit there for a week or whatever, and then they would open it up, and everybody start drinking, and then everybody get happy. So I got into that jar one day. And next thing you know, I was happy. They said I was jumping up and down on my sister's bed. But, part of my journey was the anger and the unforgiveness I had. I'm going to tell you, especially you men, about unforgiveness. It doesn't control you. You control it. And if you don't deal with it, the innocent's going to pay for it. My wife paid for the anger that I had toward my mother. She used to tell me, I'm going to get to that question, brother. She used to tell me, you need to change. I said, change for what? Ain't nothing wrong with me. I'm cool. She said, no, you think you're cool. You ain't cool. Well, no, I'm good. And this went on for a few years, and I woke up one morning, and she was gone. And I told my friend, I said, why didn't she say she wanted me to change? He said she did. She used language you could understand, an empty bedroom. And so I went to where she was at, and I said, okay, if you come home, I'll go see a counselor. But I don't want to see a counselor, because if you go see a counselor, somebody's going to think you're what? That's right. Wow, I got a whole classroom in here, man. Yo, I'm feeling at home already, man. And I said, I ain't crazy. And she would look at me sometimes. I ain't crazy. And I was doing and she just kind of looked at me like, okay, if you say so, you ain't crazy. Praise the Lord, But she came home, and I called a friend of mine who was a counselor. I said, I want to come see you. He said, okay. He gave me the address to his office. I said, oh, no, I ain't coming to your office. Because if somebody see me going to your office, they don't think I'm crazy. I'm not crazy. I got a few issues, but I ain't crazy. And I was so concerned about people thinking I was crazy. It never dawned on me. Because I said, I'll meet you in that park around the corner from your office. It never dawned on me when people walked by what they thought when they saw this white guy and this black guy in the swinging and talking to each other. It didn't matter. They didn't think I was crazy. I didn't care about all the rest. So eventually I started asking my dad. I said, Daddy, what happened between you and Mom? Now, my mom, she will tell you today what happened. Hadn't quite worked through her stuff, but it's okay. It's my mama. My dad said, well, what'd your mama say happened? Well, Mama said such and such. Well, it must be what happened. She was there. I said, no, Dad. Come on, Dad. You know what? I want to know what happened. I'm grown. I got a wife and kids. I just want to know what happened. And my dad had a way of looking at you to make you feel about this big, like, didn't you hear what I said? And I said, Daddy, what happened between you and Mama? And he said again, what'd your mama say? And I'm thinking he's getting a little older now, a little senile, so I repeated again. When I said it the 3rd time, my dad did the hand thing. He said, you're not going to get me to say anything bad about your mama. He said, what I want you to know is this. Whatever your mom said happened. She was there. Now, here's the crazy part. She said a lot of things about Daddy and their relationship. And I didn't realize some of it could possibly be true until 2 things happened. Number one, I got married. That's pretty weird. I thought, where'd this come from? I was drinking a cup of coffee one day, and it just hit me. I'm like this, you know. The other thing was when my father was in the hospital dying, he says, you know what I want, don't you? I said, nah, Dad, what do you want? You know what I want. No, Daddy, I don't know what you want. I just want your mom to forgive me. And I'm thinking, she left you with 6 kids, and you want her. And now I'm going, you mean some of it was right? And as I was driving home that day, I called my mom. I said, Mom, I need you to do me a favor. I need you to go to the hospital and see Dad. They both had been remarried. Stepfather had passed away. She said, what's wrong? What's wrong? I said, Mama, I don't know. My daddy needs to talk to you. I need you to go. If somebody's there, you just wait. When they leave, you go in. He has something else. And they'd become friends. I said, 2 things. I don't know what he wants to say, and I don't want to know. Okay, baby, I'll do it. And my dad and my mom and my stepdad, they always thought about us kids. I'm serious. They always thought. My dad was trimming my mother and stepdad's lawn when they were celebrating their 25th wedding anniversary, and I was going to conduct a ceremony. And my dad was a gardener. He's trimming the hedges, cutting the lawn. I go, man, what are you doing? What do you think I'm doing? I'm cutting the grass, trimming the bushes. No. That's not what I'm talking about. And this is what he said. I got 2 things to say to you, son. I'm very happy for John, and I must always be an example for you boys because you never know what life's going to present. So my mother went to the hospital. She called me up like she said she would, and she says, we're good. So y'all good? We're good. So I don't know to this day. And it's a gift that my father gave to me and my brothers and sisters. We all know. And it don't matter now. And what my father would say if he was here, boy, it didn't matter then. You're just nosy.
As you talked just a little bit there about how your dad was always thinking about y'all, his kids, and even beyond that, his legacy into having grandkids. You've said to me a few times, well, you've said a lot of things to me, but when it comes to like our current world of social media and the news and just how everyone kind of gets on social media and now has this platform to say all their thoughts and their opinions and all that, you've been so formative for me in the reason that I act and carry myself online the way I do. And I've told our church, before in membership class, those that go to, our City 101 or 201, if you're looking for someone who's going to get up and, kind of go this route, I want you to know that this is how I've been taught and the wisdom I've walked and the counsel I've walked under. But I want them to hear it from you, from the source, like in a social media world where, everyone kind of gets a chance to do that, share what they think, share what their opinions are about everything. Could you just speak to that in terms of thinking of those who are underneath your care?
I'm going to answer that, but I want to say this. This relationship, some of you maybe think, wow, this is really cool. They've been like this for 20 years. No. I remember one time I got so mad at him, I said, don't call me, don't write me, don't send up a smoke signal or a tweet or nothing. I don't want nothing else to do with you. And we've wrestled. He's had to share some things with me that maybe I didn't like. But through it all, we just realized the relationship was worth working through the issues. So many people don't want to work through the issues, especially in the world of race. I mean, the Bible says, blessed are the peacemakers, for they should be called the children of God. When I go online and I read some of the stuff that, quote, Christian people put out there, it's like the world is on fire and the best they can do is bring a 5-gallon bucket of gasoline. And when I read some of this stuff, I just want to say, who is your daddy? I think I know, but it's not who you think it is. And so my wife, she don't know who I vote for. I don't know who she votes for. That's not important. The important thing is we vote. We don't say, I know what's going on in society today. I pray for the president. Some of my black friends think I don't. What do you mean lost my mind? You were upset when white people didn't want to pray for Obama. See, I'm not looking for the flavor of the month, but I am looking for what the Bible says. And you know what happens when I want to communicate with a leader? Well, why would I talk to Chris? He can't get to the president. So I know some people who can. They're called state representatives. I'll write them a letter. So you know what happened? And I know how to write a letter to get a response. Not, I'm so mad, I can't believe you, I can't. No. You want to write a letter and get a response from anybody, here's how you do it. This is for free. Help me to understand, out of all the things going on in the world, what made you make that decision? You will get a response. See, that's a question of respect. Help me to understand. You've humbled yourself. But I watch these people online, so I tell my kids, don't nobody care nothing about your opinion. Keep it to yourself. If you want to give, you always want to give people a piece. You can tell people who are always giving a piece of their mind away online or wherever because they walk around like they've lost something. And Daddy used to say, if you want to give somebody something they can use, give them some money. Keep the peace of mind. Give them some money. And there's so many people that are so cotton. It angers me because my grandchildren have to deal with, and they'll say something. I thought this was one of your Christian friends. Papa? And then I get angry because, folk, we have an opportunity as the body of Christ like this. This community needs this. But if you want to start talking politics, what you'll have is about half this room. You know what half that'll be? The half that agrees with whatever political person is talking. The moment you start espousing that craziness, you just lose half your friends. I had a friend, he put on Facebook, if you're voting for one of the people, I don't remember which one now, then take me off your Facebook. I go, what in the? Is a relationship that fickle? I can't think. See, I think that you and I should be able to talk about whatever when we get done, so now let's go eat. Yeah. And because you think you're right, you buy. Let's go eat. Let's go eat. And what will happen is this. If you will take the time to get deep, and then you're dealing with somebody of color, I don't care what color, you get to go on a ride with them. You get to hear the historical stuff. If you don't want to hear it, don't. And that's why there's not really solid relationships. We have talked about some stuff. We have traveled the world. I've looked at him sometime going, where in the world did he get that thought from? And I'm sure he's thought that about me. But he's a very wise young man because he's kept it to himself.
I want to talk a little bit about just the idea of your life example. I think that we have a world, especially here in America, that is discussing and talking about racism and race relations and the challenge of that. And I think it's an interesting opportunity for us. We talk about this often that, I'm a white man, you're a black man, and we come from different backgrounds. We love the same Jesus. We don't agree on all the issues, but we respect each other and we listen and talk and share. And so I want us to be able to hear from you because you've had a unique view of just race in America. And it's not even on our notes, but it is one of the more impactful things that you've said to me, where as a child, you watched some stuff on TV and got an idea even just about what certain animals even thought about you. And that just, it never occurred to me. I never had that worry. That never got in my heart. Would you talk a little bit about that and we'll kind of take it from there?
I was 10 years old and I'm watching television and I'm watching Dr. King and watching what's going on back in Birmingham. And there's the police dogs and the water hoses and all that's going on. I look at my grandmother on the couch and she's sitting there humming and singing. And I just sat there and went. And I said these words to myself. If I ever have a chance to show the world that blacks and whites can do something together, I'm going to do it. I didn't know. I can't tell you where it came from. And then I just went crazy. I should have lost every chromosome in my brain. And one day God brought that back to me at my mid-20s. And that's part of my journey. I've got 3 beautiful grandchildren. They're half white. See, there's certain things I can't afford to go crazy. My grandbabies are watching me. And I am on a mission to do what I am not the answer, but I'm part of the answer. And the reason I don't think all of our opinions are important is, remember I said one of the people in our home was my great-grandmother? Well, my dad used to take us to this little small white Baptist church. And after church, some of you even will do it, you'll hug each other, good to see you. And these white people would be hugging. And when they got to my little Indian grandmother, great-grandmother, she would do this. I never, ever saw my great-grandmother, Mama Mandy, let a white person hug her. You want to know what the gift was? It's going to totally shock you. She never told us why. She could have messed up every one of us, her 6 great-grandchildren. Let me tell you about white folk. You know, I'm from Louisiana, so let me tell you what white folk were like in Louisiana. They used to da-da-da-da-da. She didn't do that. And some people think, who cares about your cotton-picking opinion? Kids are reading it. They're looking at you, and then and then the next voice, praise God, I love Jesus, and I went to church, and I just want to say, shut up. Don't tell anybody. Yeah. Keep it to yourself. Yeah. But God has allowed you and I to be a part of what's going on in the world today, because I think he thinks we can keep civility going. Somebody's got to keep some civility going. I am not afraid to voice my opinion. I have vehicles where I voice my opinion, but I don't put it out there where it becomes a disruption to others who I know are watching my life. I think the people that I get to influence the most is Bill and Chad and Sophia, my grandchildren. You understand? You ought to start, if you're one of those folk, I got a blog. Okay, what are you blogging about? If you go on my Facebook account, all you're going to see is pictures of me and my family and some friends. And if I post a picture of me, and even with Chris, I might get a few hits. But if I put out that picture with me and my grandbabies, it's like the whole world just came unglued. 3,000 hits or this. And it just goes because people care about something good. I'm telling you, folks, we are the answer. I'm not the answer. You're not the answer. Black people are not the answer. White, Hispanics. Chris and I, a few weeks ago, went over into Mexico. I spent the day over there. And my heart was broke coming back across that border. So many people have an opinion about what's going on. They've never even set a foot in Mexico, can't even spell Mexico. You got to put yourself in a position. You know, so many people think it's important. You know, when black people or a person of color talk, the first thing a lot of white people want to do is tell them why they shouldn't think that way. I had a friend one time. He was in this hyper-religious group, and I had a headache, and he said, man, don't confess it. I said, confess what? I had a headache before I confessed anything. Don't tell me what. So you're going to tell me what not to think? What would happen, men, if you went up and asked a lady, what does it feel like to work the same job as that guy and get less money? And then walk away and look at them and say, I never thought of it that way. But we always feel like our opinion is so, I hear some stupid stuff. And you know, and I go, wow, that's interesting. I really have never thought of it that way. And then when they leave my presence, I go, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. But we feel like we got to let them know so they won't even think we halfway. So what if you think I agree with you? That doesn't bother me. I'm pretty secure in some areas of my life. I don't have to always voice my opinion. You need to put a picture up there. This is part of our travel road. This young man, this picture.
The one you got up next is fine. The table. There you go.
I don't know what event it was, but I'm going to tell you, Thanksgiving. You know his daughter Ellie and I are born on the same day. And I told my daughter and my granddaughters, I said, he calls me from the hospital, and I look at him. Probably shouldn't have said it, but I did. You guys had 13 opportunities, and none of y'all could get it right. Brenda got it right on her first one. I had to keep Brenda away for a few months, you know. And he would come over. This is my family, my wife, my oldest son, my daughter, our middle child, then my son-in-law straight across. And we're just sitting around the table, and if you notice, only one person has a plate going to their mouth. Yeah. I'm going to tell you something. He can eat. Don't gain any weight. It don't care if it's ribs, chicken. Listen.
I'm not picky.
Macaroni and cheese. No, he picks, but he's not picky.
I want to hear a little more about this space that, especially for me as a young white kid, 19 years old, you were such a powerful force in the space of race relations for me. And I still remember the first time that you told me this, we talked about this idea.
He remembers a lot of stuff I don't remember, okay? I just want my qualifier.
But what you told me was that a white person all too often wants to tell a person of color how they feel and how they're supposed to feel whenever a subject comes up that makes a white person uncomfortable about an injustice that a person of color is experiencing. And I think that that's a challenge that we see in our world today, and I think it's scary for people to speak up against it. Often you'll have people of color who will say, hey, here's a challenge, here's an issue, here's something I'd like you to take note of, and you have what I've even now come to, I took the pill, I see it, I'm out of the matrix, now I look and I can see that is a standard white person's response. They are going to be defensive. They are going to kind of like say, well, yeah, that might be true, but what about? And they get out the whole scroll of everything wrong with black or brown or whatever ethnic group. And which doesn't work great in marriage, right? Like if your spouse brings up something, hey, honey, I want you to know that this is how I'm experiencing you. If all of a sudden they say, oh yeah, well, what about when you did this? And what about when you did that? And what about when you did it? It doesn't work in marriage and it doesn't work in race relations. And you taught me that. How do we, I'm going to ask this because I am a white person. How do people who look like me heal the wounds on the hearts of our black and brown sisters? Because as a Christian, I don't get the option to not care. I don't get Jesus doesn't give me the option to be like, well, that's not my problem. In the body of Christ, there's no such thing as their problem. Their problem is our problem. Like we can't just, well, that's not, doesn't impact me. I don't have to struggle with that. I'm not the one that did what they did. I'm not the one that, or irresponsible, whatever it is that clouds. In the body of Christ, we should be bigger and we should have a different view of our responsibility, no matter what color you are. But since I am what I am, how do we, in a very charged America, how do we heal the wounds of the sisters in the body of Christ, of our black, our brown, and our other ethnic brothers and sisters? What would you say to that?
Very succinct. Just listen. My wife is I married her because when I started dating her, she would listen to me. And when I left her, I felt like we had sex, but we hadn't had sex. And I thought, if I can feel this way and we haven't had sex, Jesus almighty, what would happen? Can we take this relationship a little bit further? She would listen. Even when I would say stupid, I can tell when I say stupid stuff. She won't say anything. She just kind of go, well, go ahead and say it. Say what? You know that was stupid. I don't have to say it. You just did, But to listen. Sometimes the greatest gift you can, now listen, I've told you before, I am not the answer. I'm just part of the bigger answer, part of the solution. But to listen, do you know how empowering it is when you sit there, especially as a person, a white person, and you just listen to a person of color? Yeah. Just listen. You have no idea how empowering that is. If you want to have an idea what it's like, go to Africa with a group that don't look like you and put yourself in a minority seat and see how it feels. And the crazy part is you still get to come home and go back to, but people of color, women, it can't change. It can't change. And men, we have more authority than we would like to admit in this healing process. Stand up on our jobs for things that are not right, whether it involves minorities, whether it involves women, in our homes. My grandsons, whenever they're with their grandmother, I said, now her hand does not fit around a gas pump. And she cannot open doors if you're in the car with her. And I'm trying to teach them. And I've told my granddaughters, if some young man comes through the door and he's outside when they were this big and they blow the horn, you just sit where you're at. And if they come to the door with their pants down to their knees, oh God, don't go out there. Because he's telling you where he's coming from. So my oldest granddaughter is 22 years old. Here's something she's never heard. Beep, beep. From her grandfather. Even if it's raining, I'll either walk to the door or call on the cell phone. But I'm trying to help them to understand, because I have that influence, the authority, and the power that every one of you men in this room have, if we'll only use it in the form of bringing about healing. This is a healing tool right here. So healing.
Could you say it in almost like super direct terms? If I was someone who was like, okay, I want to do it. I have some friends. I have some people of color in my life. I don't know that I've ever even asked the question. I don't even know where to start. I don't even know what to ask. What do I ask, and how do I let them know I listened? What do I say when I'm done listening that lets them know I was really paying attention?
First of all, I've had to do this with some of my white friends. I'll say, I was born, raised in America and all the rest, but I ain't never been white, so I don't understand what it's like to be white. Or tell some of my female friends, I ain't never been a woman. Chances are I'm never going to be a woman, but I need you to help me. It's so humbling when you tell someone, I need you to help me. I need you to help me.
That's good.
Okay, and then you tell them, and I've had to do this, I'm going to probably get it wrong and offend you, but I need you to help me. I don't understand this right here. There's nothing in my matrix that makes me understand what it's like or how you feel when you cut on the television. See, you don't walk around saying, if this happens, I'm going to feel this way. I went in my office one day, and one of my friends had sent me, it might even been Chris, I don't know, just a little video clip. And so I'm sitting there with my administrative assistant. She happens to be white and understands the issues. I said, hey, somebody just wanted, so-and-so sent me this. And if they're a close friend, I turned it on. And it was that episode when this young man was pulled over by the police officers. And I'm betwixt and between, because my grandpa was the police. And he tells the police officer, I have a permit, blah, blah, and he gets shot. And I just sit there looking like this. I didn't come to work saying, if I see this, this is how I'm going to feel. I didn't know how I was going to feel. And I just got up and looked at my assistant. I said, I got to get out of here. I said, I just got to get out of here. And I just left the office, and I just went walking for I don't know how long. Because what happened in that moment is that young man in the car was my grandson. And I asked my grandson one day, what would you do if the police pull you over just for a ticket? He said, I just opened up the glove compartment. I said, no, grandson. Listen to your grandfather. You just sit there with your hands. My daddy never had to tell me that. But it's a different day. I can get mad or I can train. And when he comes to the door, you say, everything you want is, would you mind? I'm 65 years old. And when I get stopped, I'm the same. I get away with so many tickets. You want to say, when I do get stopped, I haven't had any lately, but you know why? Very few white police officers have had a man with the color of my hair say, yes, sir, no, sir, excuse me, sir, like I can. Because you know what happens? You know why they stopped me? I broke the law, and the law won. They're just doing their job, trying to keep me safe and other people safe. So I'm not mad. So the least I can do is just give this person respect, because he wants to go home, she wants to go home, everybody wants to go home. And so you don't know how you're going to feel. But when you listen and you go, wow, I have never thought about that. My wife has had to help me with a lot of things, because that's pretty stupid. I had to deal with a lot of single moms, and I never had a single mom. I had a single dad. And we would go getting ready to do something, and this lady didn't have, she didn't even have like $25 or something. I said, she just can't put $25 away. And my wife just looks at me and says, sometimes you just don't have it. I felt about this big. These are healers. This can sometimes be very divisive.
Listening is the healing. It's a pretty profound statement. I've known you for 20 years now, and this is the first time when we were going over just our talk and what we want to talk about, this is the first time you'd ever said it so succinctly. But I love the phrase that listening is the healing. That you're not going to heal somebody by talking to them about your view. You're going to heal somebody by listening to their experience. And I am of the opinion that whoever has the most power should be listening the most and doing it first. And it doesn't matter what situation that's in. With Eliana, I got the power. So you know who's doing the listening when she's sad? Me. Not her. No, you listen to me. Nope, it ain't like that. It's, honey, tell me what you're feeling right now. Now, I'm going to walk you through my thoughts. But we're going to start with, you are the one without the power. So whoever has the power should have the humility. And where do we learn that from? That's our Christ. Full of all the power, and yet submits humbly to give those without the power a chance to be loved, healed, and cared for. And I think that that's how we're going to begin to improve the quality of the conversation in America, is when whenever you find yourself the person in authority. Doesn't matter if you are, what background, what ethnicity you have. You have power when it's your kids and grandkids. You have power when you're the boss. You have power when you're the person that, is in a position that has something that someone else doesn't have. And that's when we get a chance to say, hey, I want to do what Jesus did. When Jesus realized he was the most powerful person in the room, and everybody was looking at the most powerful person in the room, he got up and he went down and he got on his knees and he washed feet. And then he told us that he wanted us to do that. The way that we're going to heal and provide a picture of healthy race relations is, number one, you need to have a relationship with somebody who is different than you. You can't heal nothing if the only people you know that are close to you look like you, act like you, vote like you, and think like you. If you want to make a difference, if you want to change the world in this space, it ain't going to happen by you liking and agreeing with everyone who already says what you already believe on Facebook and Instagram and the news. That don't change nothing. That keeps it the same way. You want to change it, you got to get to know somebody so different than you, and then just listen and care, and then wash feet, and then repeat back, if I heard you right, this is what this feels like for you. Can you imagine what would happen in our city if just us in this room did that? Just us. Nobody else even in our city. Just us. This church said, we will be known as a place that knows how to do that. We will learn how to listen and be humble like Jesus listened and was humble and cared for us. Can you imagine what our grandkids would be like, what our kids will be like, what our marriages will become, what the students, what our kids growing up in our city will be? What picture could we give to the world if we'll just do what Jesus asked us to do? Pastor, I'd love you if you just pray for our church as we get ready to close, and then I'll give them some directives as we leave today.
And Jesus has filled you with his presence and said, go and do likewise. Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for my young friend, Chris, his lovely bride, Brenda, and little Ellie. Thank you for his mama, and I bless the memory of his daddy. The life that they brought into this planet that has touched so many. Lord, the positions that you have me in and the people that I get to associate with, they get to hear him. They just don't know it's him. It's the influence that you've given him. So would you bless this church? Would you give my young friend wisdom as he leads these people to the foot of the cross where they can learn to be like you, and then together we can make an eternal impact on this world. It's to that end that we give you praise.